Jovan Buha! Buha!
Yo, I'm Jovan Buha, Lakers beat writer for The Athletic, and welcome to another Lakers postgame reaction show. Just got back from Crypto.com Arena, where the Lakers won 94-85, an old school 90s style box score, final score, to even the series at 1-1. It is now a best of 5 series. 3 of those games will be in Minnesota, potentially, depending on how long the series goes. But LA has tied the series, and it was behind a dominant defensive performance. LA, fun fact from tonight, or not so fun if you like offensive basketball, LA actually scored 1 point fewer than game 1 when they didn't crack triple digits. They scored 94 points after scoring 95 in game 1. So the offense is something we're going to be touching on throughout the show. But there was a 32-point swing defensively from allowing 117 in game 1 to just 85 in game 2, which was the fewest amount of points the Wolves have scored in a game this season. Their previous season low was 93. So the Lakers almost topped that by double digits and ended up being 8 fewer points than they scored 93 a couple times in the regular season. So that alone, I think like the Lakers defensive game plan worked against Anthony Edwards. They actually executed it. It tried. It were physical. It's amazing what happens when a team is actually locked in and approaching a game like a playoff game. But a nice bounce back win for the Lakers. I think they can go into Minnesota feeling much better about where things are at with this series, and certainly a lot of room for improvement on both sides of the ball, particularly on the offensive end. Looking at the second half, they only scored 36 points after scoring 58 in the first half. So we will touch on what kind of changed there for them in the second half, but another monster Luka performance, and LA has tied the series at 1-1. So again, avoided the disaster of going back or going to Minnesota rather down 2-0, and Minnesota having all that momentum and potentially looking at like a 4 or 5 game series if that had gotten to that point. So LA, I think again can look at, they didn't make too many adjustments from game 1, at least on the defensive end, and they were just able to execute at a higher level. And I still think there are several layers of adjustments for them to unlock, several things still in JJ's pocket that I think that they have to feel pretty good about. But before we get into the big picture and 3 takeaways, you guys know the drill. For those watching on YouTube, please be sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on channel notifications, and like and comment on this video. And for those listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcast platform of choice, please be sure to follow, download, and leave a 5-star review. Shout out to the late night gang. Shout out to everybody in the chat. Appreciate you all tuning in. I know we went a bit later than usual, but with the playoff post-game stuff, it takes a little bit longer. So try to go live as quickly as I could. But let's get into it. So Buha's big picture is, tonight was the series blueprint. The 2 things that JJ had mentioned entering game 2 were playing with a certain level of physicality and being more organized offensively. And the Lakers did both of those things tonight. I thought from the opening, like, they won this game in the first quarter. If you really look at it, they were up by 19 going into the second quarter. They outscored Minnesota 34-15. And from that point on, Minnesota actually outscores them by 10 the rest of the way. But it didn't matter because they set such a dominant tone from the jump. And you saw there was no hesitating. There was no passivity. It was aggression. It was being physical. They were dictating the terms of engagement. I thought they did a better job in their switches versus Ant. There was no confusion as to like, am I switching here or how am I approaching this? It was like, no, they were up in their switches. they were being physical and pressuring the ball. There was more full court ball pressure. There was more half court ball pressure. Guys, if you see where Minnesota was running certain things, like guys were catching the ball further out than initially anticipated or expected, and the Lakers were just pushing them around and dictating their offense. And it did result in a lot of fouls. And that was one thing from this game that I tweeted this out. At one point, there were 63 possessions into the game, and there had already been 22 foul calls. So that was essentially more than a third of the possessions had resulted in a foul on one of the two teams. And it's a very physical game. Some odd stuff with the fouls. Like it was like sometimes guys would get hacked at the rim and there was no foul, and then there would be a backcourt foul or a touch foul on something, and just interesting game in terms of like how they deemed the what was appropriate contact and what wasn't. But certainly this game was in the trenches. It was in the mud. This was a war, right? That's what Austin and Dorian and Rui and Luka and several guys had talked about ahead of game one and after game one, in terms of like the Lakers needing to approach this with a certain level of seriousness and physicality and intensity, urgency that they just didn't have in game one, for those who spoke after game one. And I just thought, like, they pushed the Wolves around. And the incredible thing was Jackson Hayes played 9 minutes. This might have been his worst performance of the season, arguably, in my opinion, especially considering the stakes. He had 5 fouls in the 9 minutes. He had one horrible sequence back-to-back where he picks up I believe that was his 5th foul in the backcourt, just sets an illegal screen, which was like, I think he had good intentions behind it, but just not the time to do that. Then on the next possession, he picks up a goaltending. You see JJ's fuming the whole time, and like just Jackson's mistakes mounting, and then he pulls him, and that's it. So Jackson plays 9 minutes, 1 minute more than game one, but still not a lot, and I don't think as much as the Lakers had intended. And then Vando plays 8 minutes. So we talked about those two guys only playing 22 minutes in game one, and ideally that number in game two and beyond being closer to like 35-ish minutes combined, which still is not that much. Like if Jackson plays 20, Vando plays 15, that's only 35 minutes. You also have Rui leave the game in the first half because he gets struck in the face and has to come back with a mask. And he's out for around a quarter or so of like game time. And still, Jackson only plays 9 minutes. Vando only plays 8. So Lakers actually downsize in this game and play smaller for longer. And in spite of that, the rebounding was better. I thought the physicality in the paint, the sandwich rebounding, the gang rebounding, but also the post defense, the help, like just across the board, everything I thought was sharper, what was crisper, was more intense, what was just greater physicality there. So I think the Lakers, it's going to be interesting to see if they can maintain this level of defense the rest of the series. I think that will likely determine whether they win this series or not. And I think they can. And I think we've obviously seen stretches in the regular season. But I think as we saw in the second half, it did affect the offense. And that had been a bit of a trend later in the season where like some of these better defensive performances, they just didn't have the legs. And part of that's just playoff basketball. Part of that's just like you got to figure out a way to win. And that's what they did. They got some timely stops. They got some timely plays. LeBron sees Ant streaking across the floor in transition, goes and steals the ball and gets that bucket. That big play. Wolves are down 9 with momentum and the game shifting in their favor. Instead, LeBron steals it and goes and finishes. Austin takes that charge. Austin also beats Rudy Gobert off the dribble. So just some big plays from the Lakers down the stretch that, again, was not the prettiest fourth quarter. They scored 13 points, but they took care of business. And I think moving forward, again, like tonight was the blueprint. I thought the offensive organization was really good in the first half for the most part. Some, a couple rough stretches there, but Luka was dominant. LeBron and Austin, I think both were better offensively. And then it was, just defensively a group effort in keying in on Ant. I'm going to talk about the defense in a second, but I think this is the way the Lakers need to play moving forward. There will be some things they need to adjust in game 3 and obviously beyond, but it felt like this was a lot of what they had intended to do in game 2. I mean, in game 1, it's better that they did it, sooner than later. They were down 2-0 before they finally started to play hard at the beginning of a game. But certainly, like, had they played this way in game 1, we're potentially talking about a 2-0 Lakers lead, or a more competitive game 1 that maybe goes down to the wire, and then it comes down to just like execution and shot making. Wolves were on fire in game 1, so maybe they still win it. But I think that the Lakers, had they played with just smarter and harder and stuck to what they had wanted to do defensively, I think, we're potentially talking about a 2-0 series lead for LA going back to Minnesota. Notable performers, I have to start with Luka, who had 31 points, 12 rebounds, and 9 assists, 9 of 20 shooting, just 2 of 8 on threes. I thought he settled a little bit with some of his shots, but just the step back wasn't really falling tonight. 11 of 11 at the free throw line. That was a huge thing for him, was drawing mismatches. I mean, basically anyone guarding him is a mismatch, but getting downhill and with the head fakes and drawing fouls, that was a big part. And I mean, the 12 rebounds, like he led this group in rebounds, and I thought he did a brilliant job on the defensive glass. Nearly missed the triple-double. He had 9 assists going into the fourth quarter, and then just wasn't able to get it. Going to touch on him in a second. LeBron, 21 points, 11 rebounds, 7 assists. I thought he was awesome defensively and really set the tone from the jump against Julius Randle, but there was also some possessions where he switched onto Ant. He was battling Rudy and Nas on the inside, for rebounding, had 11 boards, 3 offensive, and some key offensive rebounds, especially in the second half. But 7 turnovers, like the Lakers, 7 assists. Lakers offense just looked much better, and I didn't think it was a coincidence that Luka had 9 assists, Austin had 5, and LeBron had 7. He also had a steal and a block. Austin looked more comfortable in the second half, similar to game 1, had a tougher first half offensively, missed, I believe, started like 0 for 4, missed his first 4 threes. He said 3 of those were good looks, one wasn't, but he shot it anyway. But 16 points, 5 rebounds, 5 assists for Austin, 7 of 14 shooting, 0 for 6 on threes. So his jumper hasn't quite been there, but I thought the Lakers did some good things with running him off of some weak side actions to get him into the middle of the floor. I think that the key with Austin, and it's actually the inverse with LeBron, and I'll touch on this in my game 3 adjustments for the Lakers, is just that with LeBron, I think the Lakers need to do a better job of getting the smalls on him, and they just haven't really done that for whatever reason. With Austin, it's the opposite. You want to get Rudy Gobert, Naz Reid, Julius Randle switched on to Austin because he's quicker than all those guys and he could beat them off the dribble. It's been, I think, some of the perimeter guys of Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Dante DiVincenzo, Ant, Jaden, those guys all have some level of a physical advantage over Austin. With Jaden, it's just the size and the length and the overall athleticism. With Ant, it's the strength and the athleticism. With Nickeil Alexander-Walker, he's just a really good point of attack defender, and he's got long arms and he's shifty. And then Dante is kind of more like Gabe. He's a little bit bigger than Gabe, but he's that like sturdy, physical point of attack guy. That's why he picked up so many fouls tonight, in part. So I think Austin actually is going to have a tougher time creating advantages against those guys. Like I don't think him being in his bag is going to necessarily shake those guys loose. I think it's more so running him off of stuff and creating advantages where either he's cutting into gaps or moving into gaps, moving with some momentum to create that separation against some of these guys trailing him, or It's as we saw in the final play where he scored over Rudy. Like if he gets Rudy Gobert in space, like he's just too quick for Rudy Gobert, and he could get downhill and make a move on him. So I think unless they're guarding him with Mike Conley, which they have tried to avoid, I think the key for Austin is going to be trying to get him going against their bigs and finding ways to switch their bigs onto him. Rui, I thought, JJ called him a warrior after the game. I thought he played much better than in game one. Upon rewatching game one, I was really disappointed with Rui's game. I thought he was largely invisible and defensively was making a lot of mistakes, was not battling in the paint defensively and on the glass. And like, I thought he was just much better tonight. And that's also including him getting hit in the face, having to come back, wearing a clear mask, getting frustrated with it, throwing it, then having to put on the black mask and like just playing through that, physical adversity. But 11 points, 5 rebounds for him, and 2 steals and a block. I thought he was really active defensively in the paint. There were several times where Ant was trying to make passes and he was deflecting or, stealing the ball. And I mentioned Jackson. I mean, it was about as rough as it got. I didn't even mention the worst part for him. Ant dunked him into oblivion with a double pump, like taking off just inside the free throw line. It was an incredible play from Ant. I mean, so far the play of the series. And Jackson, 9 minutes, 1 rebound, did finish a lob early in the game. It was all downhill from there. And he now, he had more fouls in this game than he has points in the series across 2 games. So it has been a rough go for Jackson. And I wonder, I don't think we're at the point of changing the starting lineup, but I do wonder if this is like a 2-2 series, if you have to at some point consider just starting Dorian and going with the 5 guys that you trust more. Off the bench, Dorian, I thought he did a much better job holding up physically against, like, I thought he defended Randall pretty well. But even guarding Nas and Rudy, like, he's in the trenches with some big dudes, and he was holding his own for the most part. Shot has still not been there. Gabe hit a couple threes in the first quarter, and then his shot disappeared as well. I thought Vando and Goodwin came in and provided some of that physicality and intensity that they needed defensively, but obviously, Vando, he had the steal to end, the first quarter, then airballed the 3, and Goodwin has not really been involved offensively. So that pretty much covers the entire rotation. A stat of the night for me, there's a couple. One is going to be 6 transition points or fast break points for Minnesota after they scored 25 against the Lakers in game 1. And I think part of that was LA's offense being more organized. And when you are more organized offensively, you have fewer turnovers, though they did start to turn the ball over more progressively in the second half and in the fourth quarter. But you're also in better positions on the floor to get back in transition. And sometimes your offense can be your best weapon in terms of just dictating the pace and dictating the terms of engagement. And I thought the Lakers offense did that, especially in the first half. But 6 fast break points for Minnesota, like, they just didn't get out in transition. And the Lakers were picking them up. They were matching up early, and they were just getting back and limiting that. And I think forcing Minnesota a lot of possessions to go deep into the shot clock. And then the second thing would just be the 5 of 25 shooting. I think 25 is arguably as impressive, if not more, than the 5, because the 5, like, they had a poor shooting night. I think there was a lot of good contests. I would be interested to, I've yet to rewatch the game, but like just rewatch it and see how many of those were contested versus open. I would assume at least 70% of those threes were contested looks. And I thought LA did a much better job guarding the 3-point line, not over helping, not over rotating. So the 5 is, like, to some extent that's kind of out of their control, though I thought they defended it well. But the 25, it was just not allowing Minnesota to get to generate 3-point looks, to get those up. I thought that was a key for LA. So looking at, again, the fast break points swinging decisively in LA's favor, just really more so by virtue of not letting Minnesota get out in transition, but it was a 13-6 advantage for LA. And then the 3-point battle was a rock fight. LA made 6, Minnesota made 5. LA took 29, Minnesota took 25. So it was a low, again, I said it at the top, this was kind of like a 90s style basketball game, but LA won the rock fight, and that is what matters. Takeaway number 1 for me is going to be defensive masterclass. And again, I thought LA just basically did what we asked guys after the game, like, did you feel like there were certain adjustments defensively, or like what was the key to the success? And to a man, everyone basically said, no, we did exactly what we were supposed to do in game 1. We just actually did it. And I thought, again, forcing Minnesota to catch the ball, just subtle things like forcing them to catch the ball further away. Instead of catching it on the wing, 25 feet out, now they're catching it 28, 29 feet out, and just making them uncomfortable. And I thought Gabe did a good job of that. I thought Vando, I give a big shout out to the Banshees for coming in and making a difference. Dorian, Gabe, Vando, Goodwin, I thought they all had really good defensive moments, and everybody just did their job and was bought in and physical and competitive on that end. I thought they did a good job on Ant. He had a better performance offensively, 10 for 22, but he had 0 assists. That might actually be the stat of the night. 0 assists for Ant compared to 2 turnovers. So still not forcing him into as many turnovers as I think they'd ideally like, but Ant having 0 assists after a 9 assist, 1 turnover game, that just shows you the difference in for him. It was just a lot of the Lakers were. He talked about it after the game. He was zoning up, and that's been their strategy against him, is one person on the ball and then zoning up. But I thought a couple of tweaks with it there were situations where I think the Lakers were a bit more aggressive in their help, and they were. And I thought that was the right thing to do, because I've rewatched Ant's possessions now multiple times from game 1. And I think there was some nuance within the conversation about how LA was guarding him and what was the most effective strategy. And I think my thing that I think the Lakers did better in game 2 was that I felt in game 1, they were conceding drives, almost inviting him to drive. And I know part of it's he's just way more explosive and quick and athletic than anyone else on LA. But to me, part of it was you could see certain guys in their stance were trying to shade him or shift him to a certain spot, which is understandable. But because of how explosive he is and how quick that first step is, there were several possessions where he just split, he could see where the help was. And he is so much quicker than whoever's in front of him that he was able to get by that guy and avoid the help and split that. There was one play early where even Jackson is not trying to switch. He's just showing at the level, waiting for Rui to recover. This is game 1. And Ant just splits it. And that was obviously not the defensive strategy, is let Ant split the pick and roll. They are trying to avoid that. That's why Jackson is showing, but he's showing for Rui to recover. And then once Rui's back, then okay, then he's rolling with Rudy. So I just thought there was far too many possessions where Ant beat them at the point of attack. And part of it was strategic of them trying to shift him somewhere. Part of it was just he's faster than everybody on the Lakers, and they are really struggling to stay in front of him. Today, there were some possessions where he just beat guys, and that continues to be arguably the weakest point of the Lakers offense or Lakers defense versus Minnesota, is just Ant. They don't have a great matchup for Ant. I would like to see Vando unleashed more against him. For whatever reason, that just hasn't really been how the matchups and rotations have played out. But I thought they did a better job of playing him straight up and being you're gonna have to pick a side, pick which way you want to go, but we're gonna stay in front of you. We're gonna do a better job at the point of attack, and if you do help, or if you do drive by us, the help is a little bit higher up, and it was a little bit shifted over to prevent him getting downhill. And I thought the Lakers did a much better job of preventing him from getting downhill. Again, there were some times in transition, there were some times late in the shot clock against certain lineups, he was able to get downhill a bit more. But overall, I thought they did a much better job with that. I think they continued to protect the rim well against him. Like, that was the thing that stood out in game one. I think it translated to game two as well, was like when he did get downhill, they were able to build a wall. They were able to contest him with verticality and affect him. I think they've gotten away with some contact, to be completely honest. Like, I think they've been pretty aggressive with their contests against him. For whatever reason, he's not really gotten that. So we'll see if that changes in Minnesota. Like, that could be something that I could see changing with them getting, home court back. Is like, I think, and I know a lot has been made about the whistles, so I'm not trying to go into that whole dialogue. But if you want to look at like just his free throw shooting, he's at 4 tonight. I believe had 2 or something in game one. So like that's something that I think it's not like he's not driving to the rim. So, again, I know LeBron certainly could have got to the free throw line more. Like, you could go down and make that argument both sides. But like, just objectively speaking, I think Ant has not gotten a good whistle at the rim. And that is something that I expect to change at some point in the series. Maybe not every game, but I think there will be a game where he gets some type of whistle where it's probably leading to double-digit free throws. But overall, I think the Lakers were just more intentional with their defense, and this was the defense we saw when they were the best defense for 24 games. And I think there was some skepticism as to like if they could do that in the playoffs, and we saw they did it tonight. And certainly, I don't know what's going on with Minnesota and their offense and like the decision making. It's a little mind-boggling, but that's part of the Minnesota experience. That's part of the reason why I and many others favored the Lakers. It's just because like Minnesota at their peak, I mean, we saw what Minnesota's peak looked like, right? Like game one, but they are an inconsistent team. And as John Krasinski said on the last episode of Buha's Block, like this is not a team that performs well when they have people like believing in them and have a lead. And I thought you kind of saw that of Minnesota, just like, I don't know what they were doing at times tonight, but the Lakers took advantage of it, and the Lakers were the smarter team and the better executing team. Second takeaway for me is playoff Luka is just special, and I want to give Luka his flowers because I wasn't really able to with the game one loss and just the way that game one played out. He had 37 points, but just 1 assist, 5 turnovers, and that was partly by design with Minnesota's defense, but that was also partly due to LA's offensive organization and the way the offense was functioning. And I thought tonight, Luka, led LA in points, assists, and rebounds. And it's just, it just feels like anytime he has the ball, there's going to be a good look, and he is going to create an advantage against the defense. And he hit some ridiculous shots. He hit that bank in 3 straight ahead, which is really hard to do. It's much easier to bank on either the left side or the right side, but like a straight ahead bank is one of the tougher shots in basketball, especially from that far out. But just him abusing Rudy, but also abusing Jaden. That they switched Ant onto him a bit more, but like it just, they can't guard him, and it's more so a matter of just like, is Luka making his shots or not? And today, did have 4 turnovers. So through the first couple of games, does have, averaging 4.5 turnovers a game. But I thought did a much better job with his decision making, with his advantage creation in terms of creating for teammates. And his teammates made more shots tonight, even though, again, the point total was a bit lower. But I think just seeing Luka, he's still doing the same thing, shit talking the opposing bench, and just plays with a certain level of both joy, but also ferocity and just passion and anger. And like, he's just a fun player, and seeing it at this level, it's a lot of what we saw post trade, but it's higher stakes. It's against a better defense. It's against better game planning. And it just doesn't matter. Like, this dude is ridiculous. And I would say just seeing it now for a couple of games, like I've covered Luka in the playoffs before, being on the opposing side in terms of coverage. I've watched basically every playoff game he's played in. I know he's a big game player. I know he rises to a certain level and is really in that conversation for like best player in the world when it comes to playoff time. Like playoff Luka is a special breed. He's been the best player in this series, I think, pretty clearly. Like I don't, Ant has been really good. LeBron, I think, has been better than his numbers, but like Luka's been at a different level. And I thought defensively tonight actually was much better than he was in game one in terms of tracking guys, not losing guys off off helping and over rotate. Like he was a big part, like to be completely candid, he was a big part of that. Like I think it was him and LeBron both lost a lot of guys off the ball and were far too aggressive in their shading over. And I thought Luka cleaned that up. And actually, I mean, there was times Ant got the switch and like Luka did a pretty good job staying in front of him or like corralling him to a certain spot on the floor. So I thought Luka's defense also tonight was an underrated part of his game. And then final thing for me before we get into the Q&A, just looking ahead to game 3 and some potential adjustments, has to start with the offensive end. The offense was so good in the first half and so bad in the second half. And I asked JJ about it, and he pointed more to shot making and some of the turnovers. I think that like this team just has some bad habits when they have a lead. And of course it's better to have a lead than not to have a lead. So I don't want to say like the Lakers need to like keep the game close or like trail by a little bit to like play their best basketball. But just when they get like a 20-point lead, it becomes far too much ISO and running the clock down and stagnation. And I didn't love, there was the one lineup that I believe it was to start the fourth with Jackson, Vando, LeBron, Austin, and Goodwin. And I was like, that I just like you're giving among the 9 top rotation guys, you're giving LeBron and Austin the worst possible spacing and like offensive threats. And I know JJ's trying to strike that balance of like, defense and energy. And like, it just that line, I mean, that group did not do well. And it had a quick hook because Jackson picked up foul, 4 and 5 in that stretch. But I don't think that lineup should ever play a second again in the playoffs. And I think the offense continues to be a work in progress because, again, for as much progress as I felt like there was in the first half, especially, and like 23 assists compared to 15 in game 1, I thought the big 3, I thought Austin and LeBron looked more comfortable despite their numbers not being like that much better. Of course, the playmaking, the assists, Luka, when you factor in having 9 assists compared to 1, 6 fewer points, like he actually contributed more offensively in this game than he did in game 1. But the supporting cast has struggled to make shots. I think guys are sometimes overthinking things, and it feels like they're trying to play perfect offensive basketball sometimes at the expense of just take the open shot, make the play, don't overthink it, don't, make perfection or, whatever the expression is, like perfection's the enemy of good or whatever. So I think that's like, if they play the second half the way they play the first half, I think they win this game by 20 plus. So that needs to be the thing for game 3 is like they need to run more sets, be organized offensively, play with more pace, and just continue doing the things that help them get that 19-point lead in the first quarter that ultimately went to a 22-point lead. Like those are the things they need to do. And I would say like, it's interesting how like a game can shift your perspective, because after game 1, I was saying like there was so much low hanging fruit offensively that I had less concern about the offense, and it was more so the defense and their ability to execute their game plan against Ant. And for me, it's shifted now where like we saw defensively their fastball, like they held Minnesota to a season low, and they can get to that level when they're really locked in and being physical. The offense is still yet to click, and it's been a couple games, but more so than a couple games. Like it's been 6 games versus Minnesota where you could argue it's really only clicked in like one of those games, and that was the game that was the most recent regular season game, and there was no Rudy Gobert and Julius Randle in that game. So I think LA's offense against Minnesota, like maybe opening night also, but that was just such a different, like it is tough because the regular season examples, like different team, different points of the season. But in general, if we're just looking at like the Lakers' general offensive approach against Minnesota, Minnesota has given them a lot of problems this year, either like low scoring games, high turnover games, or a combination. And I don't think for whatever reason, like they just have been able to figure out Minnesota's defense yet. So, or do so for 4 quarters, do so for 48 minutes. So I think offensively has to go back to being more organized, as we've talked about. Get LeBron, get Smalls switched onto LeBron, let him play bully ball. Tonight, the jumper was falling more, but it just felt like if it wasn't falling, like he wasn't getting as many easy looks outside of some transition opportunities. I think that like the Lakers need to get LeBron going downhill. With Austin, I think it's the opposite. They need to run more pick and rolls to get him going against Gobert, Randall, Reed, use his speed to attack those guys. With Luka, it's pretty much just more of the same. And then with Rui, I think they could probably try to exploit the Mike Conley matchup a little bit more. And then with Dorian, Gabe, and Goodwin, it's just like take the open shot or attack closeouts and then make a play out of that. Defensively, I think they're in a pretty good spot. I'm sure Minnesota like has to approach this smarter. I would assume now, seeing the Lakers guard them the same way twice. Like I think there's some basic things that they could do in terms of where they're having guys as like the safety valve or flashing into the middle. I thought like the Lakers' physicality kind of threw them off, and they just never really recovered. It was honestly in some ways like the inverse of game 1 for both teams. I would like to see a little bit more Jackson, a little bit more Vando. I would like to see more Vando on Ant. Now, look, if Jackson's going to struggle the way that he has in the first 2 games, then there should be a quick hook, and he shouldn't be playing. Like I thought Jackson should have played much more after game 1. This was a brutal game that like I don't want to hold him to that standard necessarily, but like he wasn't that good in game 1 either. So we now have like a 2-game sample of like he's got to play better. Like there's only 7 games in the series. He's got to play better at some point. So we'll see. And I also thought his emotions continue to get the best of him, where like he's complaining to the refs after every foul call. And sure, were 1 or 2 of them like a bit questionable? Yeah, but they got called, and you got to move on. So I thought that really like disrupted him. Vando, I know the offense, I get it, but I just think he's a large athletic human being who helps on the defensive end and the glass. Like I think he should be playing more than 8 minutes. So I'd like to see a little bit more from those two. Honestly, I mean, you could even take Goodwin out of the rotation and just play the top 8 like collectively a little bit more. Otherwise, I would have to give you some more specific things looking at the film. But I think if you are more organized offensively, you're targeting the smalls with LeBron, you're targeting the bigs with Austin, and you are maybe selectively looking for Rui a little bit more, and then attacking closeouts, and then defensively just keeping your shell defense intact and aggressive and playing with the physicality. Like the Lakers should be in a better spot going into game 3 and beyond. But with all that said, let's get into the super chats. First one from Samir Dude. Thank you for the super chat. What adjustments do you see both sides making going forward? Not feeling good about this series and doubt that Wolves are poor offensively in game 3. I will be honest. I obviously feel better after seeing game 2. I still feel like, compared to where I felt entering game 1 to where I feel currently going to game 3, I am still a bit, like, in general, a little bit more pessimistic. Like I'm not wavering from my Lakers in 7. I think this is going to be a long series, and I'm still favoring the Lakers to win it. But I still think Minnesota's defense is giving them a lot of problems, and I didn't like. To me, there was like, because Minnesota went on a couple, like 3 runs in the second half. And there was the one time where JJ called a timeout and that went viral and he was cussing out the team and they won a 9-0 run after that. But like, it felt like there was like results are results. And ultimately in the playoffs, results are the results. And like, you can have better process. And if you win, it doesn't really matter. But I felt there was several times where like Minnesota got momentum, they got within 9 or 11, and then it was like they got a good look and they just missed it. And part of that, you credit the Lakers defense, but part of it was just like they just like didn't make shots. And I thought they got some good looks in some of those stretches. Now you give the Lakers credit for the LeBron steal and finish. Like that was a huge momentum play. Austin taking the charge, Austin taking Gobert off the dribble. Like there were several big plays, especially later in the game when it was kind of like do or die time where the Lakers made plays and they out executed Minnesota, which is one of their advantages in this series. They are a good clutch team. Minnesota is a bad clutch team. If there are close games and clutch games, I would favor the Lakers in those games because they have shown they are a better clutch team than Minnesota, at least in the aggregate of the regular season. But Minnesota is not going away, like despite them having their worst offensive performance of the season. Like there was a stretch there late where it felt like they were about to go on like a big run and make it like a real game. So I've been impressed by Minnesota over the first couple games. Like I think the collective basketball IQ might not be the highest. I don't think they're the smartest team I've ever seen, and that's might be their kryptonite ultimately. But aside from that, like they're big, they're long, they're tough, they're athletic, they're really good defensively. Like they're a good team, and I think the Lakers are in for a rock fight here over the next potentially 5 games. But in terms of adjustments, I think Minnesota didn't push the ball enough. And one interesting thing with this, and it kind of reminded me of the Lakers in a little bit in a sense, just because like Minnesota's a slow team. If you actually look at their pace, if you look at fast break points, like they are one of the slower teams in the league, similar to the Lakers. But in game 1, it was so clear that part of their game plan was push the ball, even if the Lakers score like off of makes, off of out of bounds situations, like push. And it wasn't something that came naturally to them necessarily, but it was something that was clearly drilled into their head and was a big part of the game plan, and they executed it well. So I think whereas tonight, I think the Lakers made them a bit more uncomfortable. They were pressuring the ball more. Minnesota, like naturally, I think doesn't want to push the ball to the extent that they did in game 1. So it felt like they kind of let up in that regard. If I'm Minnesota, I got to get back to pushing the ball, turning it into a track meet, and ultimately like trusting that they have better athletes than the Lakers. And if it's more of a track meet, more of a speed game, it's going to favor them and not LA. I think they need to. I thought they went away from Ant in space. So one thing that they did in the second half, especially of game 1, they started running 1-4 flat, which is basically flattening out their offensive alignment and having Ant at the top of the arc, and then having the other 4 guys, like 2 at the block, 2 in the corner, and basically saying, if you guys are going to zone up against Ant, you're going to have to cover all this space. And it allowed him to get some space and separation against the point of attack guy. So I think they could have done a little bit more of that. It felt like they were in more of their first half alignment from game 1, and it just didn't really work. So I think there was some low-hanging fruit with Minnesota just in terms of their spacing, their pace. I think it hurt them a lot today that Naz Reid and Dante DiVincenzo both got in foul trouble. I think that threw off their rotations, and that's something that LA should continue to exploit in terms of trying to target just some of those guys, some of those bench guys. Like Dante and Naz are 2 big parts of their offense, and not having those guys, I think, affected their offensive stretches because they were leaning more into Jaden, who kind of came back down to earth, 3 for 11 shooting, and more Rudy Gobert, 2 for 5 shooting. A lot of Julius tonight. Like he was efficient, 9 for 17, but it felt like a little bit too much Julius. If we're looking at like the pie chart of Minnesota's offense, I would, if I'm them, I would like to see a little bit more. So I think for them offensively, they could stand to be more organized and properly spaced and counter some of the way the Lakers are guarding Ant. I think defensively, I don't know what they do against Luka, but I think they can probably get to a point of loading up a little bit more against Luka and LeBron and Austin and testing the supporting cast, because at this point, the supporting cast has not really been able to consistently hit jumpers and make them pay. And maybe they get into a certain rhythm and they do, and that unlocks that. But like, I would say at this point, they've probably given the Lakers shooters a little bit too much respect. And I would counter kind of by shrinking the paint, shrinking the middle of the floor. And that's where Luka and LeBron and Austin have done a lot of their damage. So I would try to send more help and attention towards those three and be like, if Rui's going to have to hit 6 threes tonight to make us pay, Dorian, Gabe, etc. As for the Lakers, I mentioned some of the adjustments. I think it's just more offensive organization, targeting the smalls with LeBron, targeting the bigs with Austin. Defensively, I think a lot of the same stuff. I would like to see more Jackson and Vando. I think that will help with some of the rim protection, some of the rebounding, just being bigger overall. But I don't think there's much they need to really change defensively. Like I thought they did a good job against Ant. I thought they were closing out well. They were preventing threes. They were forcing turnovers. Like it really, I think, just continue to protect the rim and box out. So I think defensively, the game plan, when executed well, looked pretty good. I think the offensive end, Lakers still have a lot to improve on. Mitch Potter, thank you for the super chat. LAL was 61% versus 47% on 2-point field goal percentage, when 3-pointers was 21% versus 20%. Assists were 23 versus 14. Blocks were 6 versus 2. Defensive rebounds 32 to 25. Offensive rebounds tied at 9. That's intensity. So you're saying against, just to be clear here, you're saying it compared to Minnesota. I wasn't sure if you were comparing them to game 1. But yeah, I mean, Lakers were intense tonight, and they outplayed Minnesota on both sides of the ball, and that's why they won the game. But I agree with you in terms of that assessment. Harry Chinani, thank you for the super chat. Offense is an issue. If one of the big three have an off night, we are in trouble. The other role players need to step up on offense. Still too many one-dimensional players on the team who can't score consistently. The one thing I will say to this is, so I agree with you. I agree with you 100%, just to be clear. The concern for me is that how many games can we go back and look at where the big three were the only 3 guys in double figures? Or maybe Rui was like the 4th guy and he like barely cracked it, like tonight with 11. But like, this is a pretty common occurrence with the Lakers offense. There are the nights where DFS hits 4, 5, 6 threes. Gabe hits 4, 5, 6 threes. One of those 2 cracks double figures. Like DFS had started to play better a bit offensively later in the season. But like, if you go box score by box score, there are plenty of nights that look like this. Maybe not with like the 94 total, because LeBron got closer to 30. Austin got like low to mid 20s. There was some more assists. So like there are certainly nights where it's a similar dynamic, but the offensive output is better. The ceiling is higher. But this has kind of been like what the Lakers offense has been. It is very concentrated with the big 3. And then it's just occasionally like one of the other role players gets hot, specifically Rui, Gabe, or DFS. Like those are the 3 other primary guys. So now there have been nights where they have 5, 6, or 7 guys in double figures. That is rare. So I don't expect that to necessarily happen. Like maybe it happens in one game this series. I think it's going to be more of the big 3 leading the offense and being the primary scorers who are like, 20 plus point guys, and everyone else is like hovering between like 6 to 12 points. But I'm with you. Like it is a bit of a concern. And thus, I mean, look, Minnesota had 2 guys in double figures. It was just Ant and Julius. They had one, a couple guys close. Jaden had 8, Nas had 9. But I mean, part of me is like, this is kind of what, like, in some ways, I just think Austin and LeBron have to be better to kind of offset that, because I don't know how much you can really rely on Rui, Dorian, and Gabe for like consistent offense. I just don't think they've shown that, to be honest. Like Rui has, but he's had not been quite himself these first couple games. I thought today he was better, still not like at the peak Rui level that I think they would want him to get back to. So part of me is like, I kind of feel like this is how it's going to be, but could be wrong. But I mean, again, looking at the just the field goal attempts, Luka had 20, LeBron had 19, Austin had 14, Rui had 9. So like single digits, but like, you know, right there, not too far off Austin. DFS 6, Gabe 4, Vando 1, Jackson 2. So like there is a clear hierarchy. I mean, obviously we know the big three is the big three, but like it is pretty much like those three, a gap, Rui, another gap, like DFS Gabe, and then like a big gap with everybody else. So unless they play Jackson more and get him going in the pick and roll, which just doesn't seem like it's going to happen, I don't really see like who else is going to be that involved offensively. Also give Minnesota credit for I think they've done a good, they've prevented those 4-on-3s, 3-on-2s. They've stayed with shooters, and they play things a lot 1-on-1, and they've just leveraged their length and their ability to help and recover and shade in certain ways. So like, I also want to give Minnesota the proper credit, because I think part of this is by design. Let's see. I can barely see right now, so I'm trying my best. My contacts are a bit blurry. Braden, thank you for the super chat. Austin continues to struggle offensively, but am I crazy to say he had a good game defensively? He put in so much effort to stay in front of his man. I agree. I thought Austin was good defensively. He guarded Ant some. He was on Conley, on DiVincenzo, on Nickeil Alexander-Walker. He would switch on to bigger guys. I thought he did a good job battling Julius Randle on the possessions. He would switch on to him. So, I mean, it's funny too with Austin, because like, I don't disagree with some of the offensive struggles. I think where he struggled more is like handling the ball and creating advantages, but he still, and I know the numbers don't always tell the full story, but like he still had 16 points is below average for him, obviously, but like 7 of 14 shooting, only 1 turnover, 5 assists. Like he's not having the ball in his hands as much as LeBron and Luka. Those guys are more involved offensively right now. So while I agree that Austin has not been firing on all cylinders and like at his normal level offensively, he still had 16 points, 5 assists, 1 turnover, and 7 of 14 shooting. He struggled from 3. He went 0 for 6 on threes, but he was 7 of 8 inside the arc. And I thought inside the arc, he really did a good job of attacking bigs off the dribble, coming off some pin downs into flashing in the middle and getting a couple of middies. Like I think he was better offensively than people gave him credit for. Now, can he be even better? Can he be closer to average, like his average? Yes. So I'm not saying he's like playing at, you know, peak Austin or even close to that. Like there's still a big room for improvement on Austin. Obviously game 1, especially in the first half, was like, I mean, I said it might've been his worst half of the season. So in the aggregate, Austin has been, I would say, below expectations, below average of like what the Lakers need. And that is something to monitor. Like I have said, I think this is a tough matchup for him. I think if you are looking at the types of guys that give him problems, it is a Jaden McDaniels, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Anthony Edwards type, like guys who are long and athletic and like can stick with him through his shake and bake moves and through his perimeter attacks. Those guys can stick with him because they're just as big. They're longer, they're quicker, they're more athletic. So I think this is like the next level for him, is like how to attack these types of guys. But also I think the Lakers can make it easier by running more stuff for him, using him off the ball more, and then also finding ways to get him with big switched onto him and then attacking that. Because again, I think he's done pretty good against that. Britton, thank you for the super chat. It's interesting how we had this amazing defensive game, yet none of our banshees played over 20 minutes. Really proud of the starters, especially Luka and AR on the defensive side. I'm with you. I think Luka and Austin were awesome on that end. I think Rui, DFS, those guys did a great job in the paint, battling, being big, contesting. Rui had a block, DFS had a block. Like the Lakers had 6 blocks tonight, and one for Rui, one for LeBron, one for Jackson, one for Luka, one for DFS, one for Gabe. So like it was a all around team effort where 6 guys blocked the shot, and that's not something you see often from this group. Then defensive rebounding, 5 for Rui, 8 for LeBron, 4 for Austin, 11 for Luka, 5 for DFS. So like you had 5 guys with 4 or more defensive rebounds, and like I think that's the defensive effort that you need. So yeah, I think Austin and Luka were much better than in game 1, and despite I would classify DFS as a banshee, so I will like he's more than just that, but I would argue that his primary thing is his defense, and like the floor spacing is important too, but he comes in, plays defense, provides energy. So I would say DFS is the one guy who played more than 20, but Gabe at 19, Vando at 8, Goodwin at 7. They did it with the starter. I mean, really with the top 6, and I would say the top 5 because Jackson played 9 minutes. So we'll say like it was really that lineup that's been carrying them, and that was the difference in tonight's game. Eeg, thank you for the super chat. By the way, I don't know why these are so big. It's helping me read it because I can barely see right now, but the super chat comments have got a little bigger. Eeg, if LA doesn't want to burn out their dudes, Hayes/Vando cannot be complete negatives. May not show soon, but eventually this will catch up. That Hayes sequence, brutal. Hayes being a 2K70 instead of a 40 will be numbers. I like the reference to 2K. I would say, so to your point, I remain bullish on the Lakers winning this series, and I think it's going to be Golden State. My pick was Golden State in 6 over Houston. I think with a little bit of a break potentially before that series, and then still a little bit of a break depending on the scheduling of that series, like conference finals is when it's every other day. That they also have a size advantage to an extent over Golden State. Like I could see them winning this series and winning the next series. But when we get to conference finals, I agree with you that like the lack of depth right now, and LA really kind of playing 5 guys and I guess 6 if you want to say like move out Hayes, put in DFS, and then like Gabe's the 6th guy. They're kind of playing like 6 guys, and then like 3 other guys are barely playing. That is, I think, not a sustainable approach, especially when you have a 40-year-old LeBron. Like Luka, I think he was okay, but there was a possession late where it looked like he aggravated his some lower extremity thing, and like he was kind of limping, and like Austin is continually banged up. Rui just got hit in the face and had to exit and wear a mask. So I think my biggest long-term concern right now is like, I think the depth of this team has been tested and has not looked good. And I worry that they might have like 6.5 playoff type guys that JJ trusts. And it might be like a guy and a half short longer term. Because again, I think you could usually get by like 1 round, maybe 2. But they're like playing these guys this heavy of minutes, I think progressively into round 3 and 4, potentially, like that is a concern for me. I'm going to be completely honest about that. But yeah, Jackson and Vando have to be better. I think Vando's been fine. I all things considered, like offensively, I'm not expecting much, if anything at all, but Jackson, I think, has been pretty disappointing. Rich, your confidence level now, I would say, I mean, it's increased after game 1. And remember, game 1, I like it had decreased, but I still was picking the Lakers to win the series, and I'm still picking the Lakers to win the series. My pick has gone from Lakers in 6 to Lakers in 7. That hasn't changed. I think this is probably going to be a 2-2 series coming out of Minnesota. Maybe Lakers go up 3. Like I guess if I had to predict it, it would be 2-2 coming out of Minnesota. Lakers win game 5. Maybe they win game 6, but I would probably bet on Minnesota winning game 6, coming back to LA, Lakers winning 7. So that's kind of where I'm at personally right now. I would like to see a better stretch of offense from this group to make me feel better about like them actually winning the series, for sure, just because I think the offense has been pretty rough, and maybe they just end up winning 4 rock fights against Minnesota, and like that's the way they advance. But I think, but like between, like I'll say, Minnesota's game 1 win was more impressive than the Lakers game 2 win. I'll just say that, and like they're now up in the margin of victory, and like ultimately it's a 1-1 series, but they stole home court. They have 3 of the final 5 games at home, so like the Lakers now have to go into Minnesota and steal home court back. And I think they could do that. I think they are going to do that. I think, again, it's probably going to be a 2-2 series, but I think I'm still optimistic. I would like to see a little bit more offensively, and like this group's struggles with offensive organization. Like a part of it is on JJ and the coaching staff for sure, but I also think part of it, like on some level, has to be with the players of like taking the accountability and the initiative to actually like run stuff and call stuff. I think that's one of the biggest like gaps in like some of this stuff is like, it's not all just like players don't want to be micromanaged. I think if JJ called a play on every single possession, that would get annoying. Like players want to play with some level of freedom, some level of them dictating the terms. So of course, coming out of timeouts, coming out of certain situations, like JJ has great ATOs and sideline out of bounds plays. And I think he has the organization was better in game 2 compared to game 1, but I think part of it's on the players, and like they got to fix that. Christopher, thank you for the super chat. Teetering, but encouraged by effort on D and within the margins. Numbers Mitch shared. Not quite Vogel game 1 feel out game plan, but that end felt more sustainable tonight than what they've been on offense. Yeah, I wouldn't say that was a classic Vogel or LeBron game 1, just because they just like didn't really show up. Like I don't think that was. I mean, certainly there are things you can like. There are elements of I think it being a feel out game for them, but I thought they just like. I mean, JJ called them out without calling them out by saying like they were not physically ready for Minnesota, and that. He did take some accountability and said maybe they should have scrimmaged more, but like you could read between the lines there of like when you were saying your group was not physically ready for something, in some ways you are calling them out from a physicality perspective. And I thought they responded well in game 2, but I'm with you. I think there was a lot that was sustainable from tonight, and there's a lot that could also be better and cleaned up, especially on the offensive end. But I would like to see more offensive organization. That's really it. Eeg, thank you for the super chat. I think LeBron's expending on defense so much it's killing his legs a bit / jumper. Thoughts on AR on offense? I think he needs to carry some of the LeBron load a bit. I haven't seen LeBron guard like this since 2020. I thought there was stretches in 2023 and even like the Denver series. I think he's kind of had to guard. Now maybe not. Like I have felt this has been LeBron's best defense maybe since 2021, probably, arguably. I mean, he goes through stretches of being a good defender, but like I do think there had been some slippage over the past few years, both due to injuries, age, just general energy conservation. This year, even the beginning of this year, I thought like the first month and a half of the season was kind of rough, and then he was much better starting, I would say, like coming off out of that break in December. He was incredible defensively, and I thought their even in games with AD was like their defensive captain and quarterbacking the back line and communicating and all that stuff. So LeBron's been really good defensively this year for the most part. So I agree. I think one of the interesting things with the Austin thing is like I still think the initiating might be more like LeBron or Luka, but I think Austin can do more offensively. I just think him going up 94 feet against Nickeil Alexander-Walker or Jaden or Ant, I think that's taxing for him. Like, this is just a taxing series. This is a tough team that they're playing that's really good defensively. They're really physical. Like, I touched on it a little bit earlier, but Minnesota basically fouls on every possession, and they are constantly grabbing and hitting and elbowing, and this game got chippy, especially in the first half. The Lakers, I thought, did a good job matching that, and they were grabbing and elbowing and being physical back, but like, that's a physical brand of basketball. And of course, that's playoff basketball to an extent, but I think Minnesota takes it to an even higher level. And I thought the Lakers took it to an even higher level today. So I think part of that also just leads to shot legs and guys just not being in a certain rhythm. It's interesting because the Lakers have had like this big break going into game one, and then a multi-day break going into game two. They have another multi-day break going into game three. It almost feels like that's kind of hurt them offensively from like a rhythm and shot making perspective. You know, maybe they're going to need like later in the series when it's a little bit tighter. We'll see. But I think Austin can do more offensively. I like to see more stack actions, more horns. I talked about that after game one. They haven't really done it consistently. I would like to see more of that. But I think to be honest, among like Austin going up against some of the perimeter guys versus Luka going up against the perimeter guys versus LeBron going up against like Julius, I think I like Austin the least in those matchups. So from like an initiating, ball handling, bringing the ball up perspective, I might look in a different direction, but that doesn't mean going away. Like, there's still a lot he can do. I think he might need some more organization and like setup creation and advantage creation through the offense rather than through himself. Cause I do think this is a tough matchup for him physically. Luis, do you have a favorite player or coach interview moment this year? Also, why hasn't Dalton been playing? I believe in his abilities to help the team. I'll start with the second one first. Dalton has just been the 10th man. Like, JJ has choreographed that for really since Jordan Goodwin's emergence. Dalton got moved from the 9th man to the 10th man, and that's just the way that JJ views him. I think the biggest reason is probably the defense and some of the limitations there. The Lakers defense has been worse with him on the floor. He is not graded out, or let me rephrase that. He's graded out very poorly defensively in a lot of metrics. And I also just think eye test, watching the film, he's a guy that teams will target both on the ball and bringing him into the action, and also as the low man and the last line of defense, making him or his defender the guy in the corner where he's the guy having to rotate. And sometimes that can be an advantageous thing for the offense. So I think it just comes down to JJ views him in a certain way, and it's just not much deeper than that. I don't, just looking at the rotation, I don't really see whose minutes he would take. I guess you could argue Jordan Goodwin, but that's still like 6-7 minutes a night. So maybe they can play him for a shift like they did early second quarter and some games down the stretch of the season, just see if he gets hot. But I think JJ just has kind of made it clear how he feels about Dalton, at least for this season. In terms of favorite player or coach interview moment this year, I've had a couple with I would say one with Luka when he got there, and I said hi to him, welcomed him in Serbian, and that was like, I don't want to pat myself on the back, right? But like, obviously the first press conference, they had like a body language doctor break it down, and like he was always looking at the ground, and like there were some moments of levity and smiling, but he was clearly like going through his emotions. He was in his feels. He was going through it. And at least in like the beginning, that was one of the few times that he like actually smiled. It was when I said hi to him in Serbian. So like I thought that was a cool moment for me. And then that was also like a bunch of media people came up to me after and were asking me about, what I said or just that was a cool moment. So that was kind of one of those ones. I think there's a lot of off interview stuff that I would say I like. With JJ, I think I'll say I asked JJ about the state of the league back in Sacramento in December and the whole ratings discourse and like the state of the NBA. And he went off on like a 3-minute tangent and it went viral. And like anytime you like ask a question that you can tell like strikes a nerve, but in like a good way, and like they're kind of like dying to talk about that subject and they've almost been waiting to be asked about that, like that's always a win. So I would say with JJ, like there's been several tactical, like I always typically ask him a tactical question. But that one I thought was like, he got into his podcaster bag and he even kind of joked about it of like, and you could tell like he kind of positioned himself on the table in a certain way. It was like, he was about to give a long answer and he gave, a really in-depth, thoughtful answer about that. So I would say those are a couple that stand out. I'm trying to think with AD and LeBron off the top of my head. Nothing is coming to mind. I'm sure there's got to be something, but those are the two that stand out off the top of my head. Eeg, thank you for the super chat. Okay, my contacts are resetting right now. I can see finally. Lastly, fouls and POs are at a historic low. So you said in playoffs. Silver has to love these scores. Have you heard anything about reffing in general? All these no calls. Think fans love the intensity. Great product. Have to fix the 82. I'm with you. It did feel like, I will be honest, it did feel like the fouls kind of disrupted the flow of the game today. I wasn't like, we were complaining about it on Media Row. It just felt like it was not a well refed game, to just be as honest as I can be. I think the players have been, so I did, or we just did at The Athletic, the anonymous player poll, and I interviewed several Lakers for that. And one of the key or primary complaints from players is the way that the game is reffed and how much it favors offensive players. And I think you see that less in the playoffs, but that like, yeah, I mean, I think I would almost argue like it's not even necessarily a fouls thing or a reffing thing. It's the intensity and the urgency thing. And that's where like, I think, not to go off on a tangent about how to fix the game or like the state of the game or whatever. I do think if they decrease the schedule, and look, I'm an NBA historian. I love the records. I love the numbers. Like I love that like you can go back like 45 years and be like, what was this team's 82 game record, and you could look through NBA history and like compare, like that's kind of one of the few ways to be able to compare things, because the eras have been so different. And even that, it depends on like how strong the league was in certain seasons or whatever. But like, that's one of the few things where it's just like, like some of the stuff is changes so much, like the Suns leading, like the 7 seconds or less Suns, and Steve Nash recently talked about this on Mind the Game. Like for their time, they were the fastest team in the league. But then you look at like their possessions now, they would be in looking at like recent seasons, they'd either be the slowest team in the league or like a bottom 5 team in the league in terms of pace. So like the game evolves, the game changes, and it can be hard to compare things across eras. But we know you win 60 games in an 82 game season. That is a great season. You win 65, that's like historic stuff. You win high 60s or obviously 72, 73. Like now we're talking about rare air. That's like, just stuff of legends. So losing that would be unfortunate, but I think ultimately if players were playing like twice a week and it was like Monday, Friday, Tuesday, Friday, Tuesday, Saturday, you would see a different level of intensity. I think guys would rest less. I think guys would play harder. I think each game would matter more. Now you'd lose a lot of money and player contracts would go down. The TV stuff like that all would have to be reworked. Ticket prices would change. Like there'd be a lot of ramifications. So I don't think that's going to happen. But to get to like a more playoff like situation, I think it would have to be a decrease in games, because if you're playing, well, Lakers play 6 games in 8 days, like you could only expect so much from them in terms of intensity, and like guys are banged up. They're trying not to get injured. They're ramping up for the playoffs. Like there's all these factors going on. Lakers are resting guys. Come playoff time, it is like sometimes 4 games in a week, but often more so like 3. But every game matters more. And I think trying to incentivize in the regular season for games to matter more would lead to a better product, in my opinion. But also the reffing. Like I'm not going to deny the reffing part. I just think there's a lack of urgency that hurts the game, in my opinion. Thank Charlie. Thank you for the super chat. Sup, Jovan. I haven't been on much because games have been on weekend mornings. For next meetup, please let me in virtually. I'm not concerned about the Lakers. We still have room to improve. Lakers in 5, late night gang for the win. I will. I think that's actually a good idea. Maybe we could do a virtual meetup at the next meetup, and even just do a virtual meetup in general. And I guess like this is kind of a virtual meetup, but like more so with people's faces and stuff. That would be cool. And yeah, a lot to improve on, but not, don't worry. I'm not at Lakers in 5 yet, but maybe after game 3, I will be. Mitch Potter, you doing a meetup here in Minnesota for game 3 or 4? I hadn't thought about that. If you guys want me to, I can do it. I mean, certainly at the game, if anyone's at the game, I will be there and be around. But maybe I'm getting in late Thursday night, so Thursday wouldn't work. Friday's game 3. Saturday, I think Minnesota's hosting something like the media stuff. So maybe not Saturday night, and then Sunday's a morning game. So maybe Sunday night. I'll figure it out. But maybe Friday pregame, or yeah, I guess one of the days. I'll figure it out though. I'll post a poll. Eeg, JK, one more. Does Mobley or Draymond win tomorrow Defensive Player of the Year? I think Mobley wins. AGZ, did you already go over JJ's outburst on the court? LOL. I mentioned it. So they were down 11, and he said he just didn't like the lack of urgency in the way they were playing at that time. So incredible expletive-laden moment from JJ. Not the first time. We've seen it after games. We've seen it during games. Like he this is just how he's wired. LeBron said he likes to spaz, and that it's more so about taking in the message and not the way that he's delivering it. So it was fun. I thought it was hilarious. And but look, nothing will top what Ant said to the crowd to get fined $50,000. That was an incredible, best fine I think I've ever seen. Adam says today's communication defensively was very sharp. Everyone was talking. The switches were done more flawlessly on pick and rolls. 100% agree. I talked about that earlier in the show. And I thought the defense was incredible. Hen L, prediction for game 3. Madison says, I say Lakers win game 3, Wolves win game 4. That's kind of the way I'm leaning. I think in some ways, like these teams are kind of mirror images of each other in terms of like some of the lack of consistency and needing some like external motivation to an extent. So I don't know what it was with the Lakers in game one. Like, I don't know if they let the outside chatter get to their head. I mean, they have been bad coming off of long breaks. If you go back to, they had the in-season tournament break, they had the Fires break, they had the All-Star break, and then they had this break coming into game one. Like, they just come out with like no energy and no rhythm out of these breaks. So I don't know. Remember, coming out of the All-Star break, they lost to Charlotte. Like, I don't know what it is, but certainly it was better today. I'm gonna say that I think they split. To be honest, I don't know which one. I mean, even originally I had said that by picking the Lakers in 6, there's several ways it could have gone to get to 6, but like my initial thought was probably a 2-2 series going back to LA for game 5. LA wins game 5, then closes out on the road. I think these teams are pretty evenly matched, and it is a pretty competitive series that like I could see it going 7, but I'm probably going to stick with that in terms of a 2-2 series through 4. So either, like, you know, I don't know. I mean, it does feel like the Wolves have a lot to adjust after game 2. So maybe the Lakers finally get their like a good offensive performance in game 3, and then the Wolves are desperate and win game 4. Like, I think it's kind of going to come down to who's playing more desperate in some ways. Yahi says, I don't think our defense is sustainable. It's that's a real thing. And if it is, they like, if the Lakers defend like this the rest of the series, they could win this in 5. That's certainly possible. It's just like we've seen sometimes they have a really good defensive game, then there's a little bit like natural slippage, or they're tired or whatever. So this is where I think Jackson and Vando can be kind of swing factors in terms of if they can just play a little bit more and save a little bit of the legs of Rui and DFS and LeBron defensively, like that can have a cumulative effect throughout the course of the series and the Lakers playoff run. So I think that they're going to need some other guys to step up at some point and not just rely on like 6 guys. So, but I think that the defense might not be sustainable every single game, but I think it should be sustainable enough to win the series. Mitch Potter says, I've seen LeBron 12 times in Minnesota. Some of them have been his worst games. I mean, that is one within the realm of the series being 2-2. Like, one thing I thought of entering the series was like, maybe LA wins both in LA and then loses both in Minnesota. Like, because Minnesota, they've lost 4 in a row in Minnesota. And I can just say, I've been covering the team for 5 years, and some of their worst road losses that I can remember have also been in Minnesota. So I don't know what it is with going to Minnesota and like LA not playing well, but that is a bit of a concern. Like, I feel like it is somewhat anecdotal and just like one of those things that I don't want to read too much into. Like, playoffs are different than regular season. So we'll see if they get blown out in game 3, then some of that concern might pop back up, and it might just be like, for whatever reason, that they just really struggle. Like, I think the Wolves have a good crowd. I don't think they have a great crowd. I don't think they have like a crazy home court advantage. So I don't think it's that. I don't know what the altitude situation is there. It's not like Denver, obviously, and I don't think it's quite like Utah either. So I don't think that's really a factor. I'm not sure what it is, but they've had some weird games in Minnesota where they just kind of like don't show up or play well. PC says, LeBron looking vulnerable, whether injury or age. I kind of feel like it's more injury because we just haven't seen the same level of like downhill verve and driving. There's for those playing the Jovan bingo game, I finally said verve, so you could take a shot. But yeah, I almost want to say it's probably groin related, to be completely honest. But obviously we'll see how that bears out. But yeah, I would say he's not, especially offensively, he's not had his same burst. Steez says, if you're coaching Minnesota, would you adjust on how you attack the Lakers' late double on Ant, or trust role players shooting to come up again for game 3? I would adjust, because I don't think they, again, I said earlier in the show, 42 3-point attempts in game 1, 25 in game 2. And it wasn't like they had some like massive increase in turnovers. Like they were pretty much similar to their game 1 turnover total. I mean, in fact, I have it here. I'm surprised it took me this long to look at the box score. They had 10 turnovers in game 1, and they had 11 in game 2. So 1 extra turnover. In total, they took 7 more shots in game 1, but part of that was the free throws, because they only took 10 in game 1 and they had 25 in game 2. So that swung that a little bit. But I think going from 42 3-point attempts to 25, I think part of it was transition and not playing with as much pace. They generated a bunch of good 3-point looks in transition in game 1. But also thought the Lakers ran them off the 3-point line, had better closeouts, and some of those looks were tighter and more contested, but also some of those looks just didn't happen because of how LA was guarding. So I think with Minnesota, again, I think Nas not playing as much was a big factor. I think this is more of a Nas series than a Rudy series. I think you can see that the Lakers, especially with Austin and Luka, like their eyes light up when they get Rudy switched on them. And sometimes that can goad them into some bad or questionable shots or decisions. But like for the most part, I think the Lakers have liked those matchups and have liked the looks that they've generated. So I actually think Nas Reed is going to be a big factor in this series. And he played 21 minutes tonight because he had 4 fouls. I think Minnesota probably needs him closer to 30, and his ability to both space the floor and also attack off the dribble. Like you saw tonight, he had several drives against LeBron, DFS, Vando, Rui, and was able to generate some decent looks off the dribble. He's not the strongest guy, so he is able to be bumped off his spot a bit. But I think he's a guy that if he plays an extra 8 to 10 minutes, he's a guy they're going to switch with, so it changes their defensive dynamic. But he's also a guy who can make more plays, because I think part of it is like they don't trust Rudy fully, and that's where like even if Jackson was on, like if you swapped Rudy and Jackson, that would have obviously multiple ripple effects on both sides. But like even Jackson, I think could be that like flash middle and then make a play in terms of like find a cutter, skip pass, or just swinging the ball. Whereas Rudy, I think they haven't really tried that much, and also just when he's had the ball, it's not been good so far. So I think they need to do a better job with their spacing. I think they need to do a better job with their pace. And I some of their decision making has been very questionable. So I think that they have to work on their own offensive organization and spacing principles and timing and cutting and all that stuff. But I'm not coach of the Wolves, so but that's my response. I think they will shoot better. It's hard to shoot 5 for 25. Like that's a pretty poor night for a team that's a pretty good 3-point shooting team. But I think they need to generate more than 25 threes. That's the other thing too. Okay, so we got a couple super chats. One from Steve Stevenson. Shout out, early morning gang. We ain't stopping. Yeah, we are officially in the early morning time. I'm going to go about a real 5 more minutes because I still have some writing to do tonight. But shout out to the early morning gang, late night gang. Listen, it's always 2 a.m. somewhere. Oi da boy, LeDraymond showed up to play tonight. Yeah, I thought LeBron was arguably their best defender. I think you really could have made that case, but just his pressuring and physicality and boxing out and battling on the glass and rim protection and switchability, like LeBron was everywhere. He was 1 through 5 defensively, and that's why like I give him a bit of grace with the offensive performance. Like 21, 11, and 7 is a really good night for most guys. For LeBron, it's a subpar night, but like when you factor in the defense, I actually think he was good, pretty good tonight. Dominic says, what about starting Vando at center? I think if the Lakers make a starting move, it would be DFS in for Jackson, but I just don't, clearly, I just don't think JJ is going to play Vando that much. Like he seems to not want to play him more than like mid teens, but even tonight it was just 8. So I think Vando should play more, but I don't know that him starting is something that they're going to consider, to be completely honest. Jake from State Farm, one of the Lakers heading out to Minnesota. They're heading out on Tuesday. Their flight is at 10 a.m. They're heading out on Thursday. Their flight's at 10 a.m. They were supposed to practice yesterday. They canceled practice. So now they have the day off, but then they'll probably practice Thursday afternoon in Minneapolis. And they might have shoot around on Friday. Goatbert, thank you for the super chat. Lack of sets ran in the fourth made it scary. Yeah, I mean, the fourth quarter offense, like they should not have had it be like, again, if Minnesota was a little bit smarter or had a little bit of a better shooting performance, this game could have gotten scary late. Oida boy, did you see the practice LeBron talked about? We saw the aftermath of it. We did not get, we never get to see practice. That's one of the unfortunate things. Like, I remember when I first started covering the NBA, they never really let you see practice, but they would sometimes let you in for scrimmaging, which would always be fun. But I think in the age of social media and things going viral and people filming stuff, no one wants to be embarrassed in a scrimmage. That's why you only see certain highlights. And like, I think you also don't see like if Luka crosses up LeBron, I don't think the Lakers social account is going to post that. Like I think there's a certain respect for the players of like, maybe someone hits like a crazy step back or like a wild shot or something, but it's rarely like they're cognizant of like stuff going viral and like what that looks like and who it makes look bad and whatnot. So I think unfortunately we don't get to see that the way that we used to like 10 years ago. But we saw Luka doing some 3-point drills, half-court drills, some of the skill work with Trey Jemison, Christian Coloco, Austin working on his pull-up and step-back jumpers. That was pretty much all we saw. It was a weird practice because typically they let us in first, and then we watch a little bit, then we interview people. This time they brought everybody out into the lobby. We interviewed them, and then they let us in because they were still scrimmaging and they didn't want us to see it. So that's just kind of how it goes. Pietro K says, bro, let's be happy. We won for real, for real. I'm happy. I know, like, look, I think the big takeaway, I think, is like the Lakers can still play better. So I think you gotta factor that in and be real about that. Of like, I think if they perform like they did tonight offensively in Minnesota, I think they will lose at least one, if not potentially both. Like they have to be better offensively. That's the big thing. But defensively, they defend like this, they're gonna have a shot to win this series in 5. So I guess depends how you want to look at it, but certainly some things to be encouraged by, certainly some things that can be improved. Jabe asking me about Hayes. Yeah, I talked about Hayes earlier. I mean, I said this was arguably his worst game of the season considering the stakes and just like how many boneheaded plays he made. 5 fouls in 9 minutes is just ridiculous. Just hearing some questionable sounds outside my window. I'm hearing loud moaning outside my window. I don't know what's going on. I guess that's a different version of the late night gang. Okay. It ended. That was quick. All right. Yeah. All right. Regrouping after in terms of Hayes. In terms of Hayes, it's been a rough first couple games, but he I think tonight was more of an aberration, but he's got to be better. And I think already JJ had a pretty short leash with him. This isn't going to make it any longer. And I think he's going to have to earn more playing time to make more of an impact. But like, I think it's still possible. Mitch Potter says LNMG equals late night moan gang. I was just trying to like figure out if that was like a person or like they were like watching something, but I don't know. Not Forsaken says, I guess they're celebrating with a bang. Oh man. I'm gonna Steez, I'm glad you asked me this. I haven't talked about this. Thoughts on Rob Pelinka's extension. I thought it was well deserved. I mean, it's hard to have a better season than trading for Luka Doncic. And I think even before that, trading for DFS in a move that, I think the timing of surprised a lot of people in a positive way. And I think DFS, of course, Luka's the headliner, changed the trajectory, the future of the team and the present. But DFS, I think his defense, his leadership, his vocal presence in the locker room have been all big factors of LA's turnaround. So I think with that, drafting Dalton, like, of course, it maybe hasn't gone exactly the way that I think the Lakers or it looked like at the time or like early in the season. Like that was still a smart pick. They didn't overthink it the way that they did with the JHS situation. So I think there's been progressively more hits than misses. I think, again, drafting Dalton, trading for DFS, trading for Luka, like that's a pretty good season. Even the Mark Williams trade getting rescinded, we could do a whole hour on that, but like, I think at least going for it and taking the swing and then not liking the medicals, like, they at least were making a win now move. We could quibble about the price and whatever, but I think really the only thing I can nitpick from this season would be, I think they should have waived Alex Len and converted Trey Jemison or Christian Koloko. I think if there's any situation in which they have to rely on Alex Len, they're going to be in major trouble. And I think they're going to try to do anything they can to avoid that. I think they would play Markieff Morris above that. I think they would go small above that. So like, I just think the center situation is something that they could have managed better, in my opinion, whether it was waiving Len and converting one of the two-way guys or just doing a smaller trade around the deadline, getting like Day'Ron Sharp instead of Shake Milton in the DFS trade. Like, I think there are some ways that they could have handled the center spot better, but outside of that, I think they made the smart decision to, Jordan, I didn't mention Jordan Goodwin, signing him to a two-way, converting him, waiving Cam Reddish. Like, I think that was a smart move. So I think there's been a lot of smart moves. He should be executive of the year. The Luka trade was a masterclass in negotiating. He negotiated circles around Nico Harrison. He wisely kept it under wraps. And so I think JJ and Rob have been in a alignment. I think Jeannie clearly has a lot of confidence in Rob, and certainly throughout the years, there's been things to criticize or disagree with, but I think he's had a really strong year, and I think you make the Luka trade, you get an extension. Like they're, like, I know some people might disagree with that or whatever, but like that is a franchise altering trade that is about as big as it gets, and he nailed it. Pieter K says, "Don't trip. This gang got fight. Go Lakers." Appreciate you for the super chat. Another one from Oida Boy. Thoughts on Shaq's comments on McDonkey dirty play? I don't know what's the McDonkey dirty play? Choco Thunder, I don't know the exact years, but it is multiple years, so I would guess at least 3, but I don't have an exact number. Omar says, I just don't like how he's also the president of basketball operations and the GM. I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, these are just titles, but I do agree. I do think that, so he got promoted from VP to president, so he got the title bump. I would contend that they probably should have a separate GM, but like in a basketball org chart, president of basketball operations would be a head of GM or, above GM. So I think it would be good to just bring in another voice like below him that, can just be another voice in the room and another decision maker that like ultimately he is still making decisions ahead of them, but still having just like another basketball high level mind in the mix, I think can only help. They have one of the smallest front offices in the league. And I think just adding in another like high level thinker can only bring about positives, in my opinion. So that would be another thing, but like doesn't really have to do with him. That's more of just like an organizational hiring thing. See, we're talking about McDaniels trying to chip. I didn't see the play, to be honest. So I guess I missed that. KV, can we have a playoff stream talk about other teams, please, Jovan? Yeah, I mean, I'm going to do other playoff content at some point. Certainly if the Lakers lose this round or next round, like I will do conference finals content regardless. But yeah, I mean, I've been trying to figure out how I want to approach doing other content potentially. I think I want to make sure I'm keeping this all Lakers focused, but like if there is any, I mean, I think ideally, like the people that want to consume just Laker stuff can consume this stuff. And then if there's, something else we're talking about, we could have that conversation and also sometimes look at it through the Lakers lens. But I see OG Meatwad does not like that idea. JCU, Jovan, I know it's early, but what are your assessments on the other teams? Any teams that's impressed you? Okay, I'll wrap here on this one. I would say in the West, I've been really impressed with the Clippers and the Warriors. And I know those are not two teams that you guys want me to be impressed by, but like I think the Clippers should probably be up 2-0. Like I think it's more of a 2-0 Clippers series than a 2-0 Nuggets series. It's been razor thin margins. It's been the best series so far easily, but like I think the Clippers, in my opinion, have been the better team through the first 2 games. But it's a 1-1 series. Golden State really impressed me with their win over the Rockets. Part of that to me is just the Rockets' inexperience and their crappy half-court offense. But I think playoff Jimmy is a real thing. There's a reason why I was giving Golden State a certain level of respect entering the playoffs. And I think you saw that in game 1. We'll see how Houston bounces back. Of course, OKC, but they're playing Memphis, and Memphis is like not, they're better tonight. I mean, it's hard to be worse than a 51-point loss, but they're completely overmatched in this OKC matchup. In the East, Indiana going up 2-0 on Milwaukee. Like, I think on some level that says more about Milwaukee, and finally got Dame back, but like they're just a mess defensively. And I think we're headed for an interesting summer with Giannis. And then I would say Detroit, like, I mean, they completely collapsed in the fourth quarter in game one, but to even be in the position they were in game one and then to come out and win game two decisively and like bounce back. Like sometimes you see a young team have that moment, blow it in a game one, and then they'll get like blown out in game two and they never really get back into the series fully. I think Detroit should be feeling pretty good right now. And like, I think they have a real, I'm still picking the Knicks. I picked the Knicks in 6, but like, I think Detroit has a real shot to upset and steal the series. Then otherwise I mean, like Cleveland beat, it's hard to take much from like OKC, Memphis, Cleveland, Miami, and Boston, Orlando, because those 3 teams are just such heavy favorites. But in terms of the other series, I would say Pacers, Pistons, Clippers, and Warriors have all stood out. But I'm going to wrap here. I don't hear any additional noises, so I think we're in the clear. But I appreciate you all for rocking with me tonight. I will be back on Thursday. There's a chance I do a live during the day tomorrow. I would love to do more rewatch stuff. I know that's actually probably more of a playback thing. I don't have a playback account, and I don't really want to go off of YouTube. So I would like to figure out a way to like watch stuff with you guys and not get banned like I did last time. So maybe I'll pull some clips of plays I find interesting on both sides, but maybe I'll just watch it or rewatch the game, come back and go live and talk about it for like an hour tomorrow or something. So we'll see about that, considering that. But either way, I'll be back on Thursday. I'm going to have Claire DeLune on. And we're going to discuss game 2 adjustments, looking ahead to game 3, and just what to expect on both sides. I didn't technically get banned, but my stream got shut down like an hour in. I was going through synergy clips and prepping my prep for the series, and then YouTube ended my stream. But yeah, so thank you all so much for watching and listening. For those watching on YouTube, please be sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on channel notifications, and like and comment on this video. Make sure you get the likes up in here. I know most of you are, a bunch of you are still on. Let's get those likes up. And for those listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcast platform of choice, please be sure to follow, download, and leave a 5-star review. Again, I'll be back potentially tomorrow for a stream, live. If not, for sure on Thursday with a new episode of Buha's Block. I'll talk to you all then.